Welcome, everyone. My name is Julia Toothaker, and I am the career coach and strategist behind Ride the Tide Collective, the podcast, and the company. This is a career-focused podcast where I help ambitious corporate professionals strategize and take action to control their career in a way that aligns with their personality and their values. This season, I am embracing the collective part of my company name, and I've invited on various coaches and experts to talk about topics that impact career development and career decisions. I am very excited for my guest today because this is a topic that not many people are having really great conversations on, and we're going to be talking about career breaks today. And Katrina McGhee is going to be the guest, and she is a career break and sabbatical expert, a certified life coach with an MBA. Love that. And her signature Best Break Ever course helps corporate professionals create happier, more fulfilling lives by designing bold and transformational life breaks. Oh my gosh, I love that. Katrina, thank you so much for being here, for being a guest. I cannot wait to just dive into your story and all the wonderful tips I know you are going to provide my audience.
Yes, Julia, I'm so excited to be here. I'm ready for this.
Yes. Okay. So I want you to first talk about what a career break is, because I'm realizing now, as I did your introduction, that some people might not understand what it is. And I want you to talk about it in your context and how you define it.
Yeah. So the way that I define it is, a career break is taking a break from your job. So it's leaving a job that you have and taking an extended leave of absence. So it could be, 3 months, 6 months. I have clients that have gone on for 2 years, but it's basically taking a definitive break. Sometimes it's involuntary. You find yourself on a career break because, the company has laid off, or maybe you have the loss of someone that you feel like you need to address and deal with those issues. Most of my clients, it's voluntary. But in like the lingo of the world today, I hear a lot of people refer to work sabbaticals or work breaks, and it would be something similar. But to understand the nuance of a career break being like leaving your current employer and sort of leaping into this space where you're really fully disconnecting and then coming back to something potentially new on the other end.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so this really spans a lot of different types of breaks that people can take. Can you talk a little bit about your experience with career breaks to kind of set the stage so people understand what it can look like from a practical perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of this began with my own experience. I had been about 1 year into my post MBA life, trying to crush it in corporate America and just really feeling, my first career was as an actuary, and that was a great career. Went to get my MBA, came out, went into market research, which was really an interesting career path, but it wasn't clicking for me. I was feeling really burned out and honestly misaligned. I didn't feel like my best strengths were really being utilized in the role that I was in. And I just wasn't feeling that fit with corporate that I had wanted to feel. And I was just tired. I wanted to go be inspired. I wanted to see the world, quite honestly. I had a lot of pent up desire to travel. And I hired this life coach to figure out, well, what's the dream career that I need? And in the process of really asking myself hard questions, I realized I wanted to take a break. I really wanted to claim that time, which at the time, this is like 2011, felt mind blowingly crazy. I could not even picture what that would look like. But I ended up saving for my break. 18 months after I began the saving process, I had amassed 40K, basically down from like
Wow.
1500 to 40K. So I saved 40K roughly in 18 months. I left my job and I traveled around the world for 20 months. So my career break spent a lot of time traveling, some time at home with my family. I did a 3-month road trip through the US, visiting friends and also places that I had never been before and kind of, quenching that thirst, I guess, for adventure and exploration. But it was a really transformative experience for me. And I think another thing to share the way that I think about career breaks is truly leaving work behind. There might be a point
Mm.
in the process where you start to pick it back up. You might choose to focus some time on upskilling. You might choose to pursue a new career path and get some type of certification, or you might just try your hand at contracting, freelancing, something like that, entrepreneurship to phase into. But there's this definitive period where you are allowing yourself to be and to do separate of your work, separate of your job.
Okay. I'm so glad that you defined this, because when we started talking initially, I was like, I don't think I've ever done a career break, like the way that I was thinking about it. And as you were talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, no, I did. So you talk about big life transitions. My parents passed away and I had my son all together, very close together. And I ended up leaving my full-time job because I was like, I am burnt out. I got to manage this estate. We got to do all, I got this baby. I got to do, and I'm like, I'm going to stay home with the baby, right? Like, I'm just going to be at home. And I would say that was the break. And I think it lasted maybe 2 months before I was like, I cannot stay home with the baby. Like, I need to do
Change of plans.
change of plans. And it
Yeah.
was this combination of, and I know that I have some listeners that are going to be like, I can't believe you said that. And other listeners that are going to be like, yes, I am not a stay-at-home mom. Like, that is not my lot in life. And I bow down to the moms that can do it, because I was like, this is easy. I can do it. No, it was the worst. I mean, I love my kid. Don't get me wrong. Like, he's wonderful and he's amazing and he was a great baby, but it just was not it for me. And I found that I was losing myself. And so I ended up like starting a business and doing something else, because I was like, I cannot stay home. And I feel like that's part of my own ambition, like being a very career focused person and wanting to just do something productive that wasn't related to a baby. And so I appreciate you saying that. It's like, you have to like truly step away from what it is to experience that break and to really like almost disconnect your mind from it. Like, I
Yes.
think that's such a key thing in when we're talking about career breaks.
Yeah, absolutely, Julia.
Okay, so let's kind of piggyback onto that, because I feel like I'm probably the target audience, or I was at one point in my career. But what do you think holds people back from actually taking a career break and making that decision?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a juicy question. There's a simple answer, right? That would encapsulate probably 80% of what holds people back, and it's fear. How that fear shows up and what they're afraid of can take many different lenses. There's the fear of, who am I if I take this break? So there's a lot of self-identity for highly ambitious people that have been achieving. Like you said, I think, if we're not consciously checking in with ourselves, we can sometimes get lost in the work, and it can feel almost addictively good to be achieving and marking things off and have people validating, right? Like, you did a good job, you're a great team member. And so it's a chance to take a break to really separate from that and figure out, who am I separate of the work that I do? And so the fear of being seen as lazy, the fear of a stigma, the fear of really breaking from that identity and discovering other parts of yourself can be really scary. One of the biggest fears, right, is what comes after the break. If I can't see it, if I can't visualize it, how can I trust that everything is going to be okay? How can I trust that I'm going to find another job? Will people, not want to hire me because of this time?
Right.
How will I explain it? Another huge fear that I see is the fear of just the unknown in general. Will I get bored with all this time? How will I spend it? What will I do? What will it look like if I don't know, right? It's probably safer to stay over here. And that can
Mhm.
sort of manifest as an excuse of like, I'll do it. I'll look into that next year, right? Like, just kind of kicking the can down
Right.
the road because you're afraid of this unknown. And then money, of course, huge, huge fear. And I think there's a nuance here, right? For the other, like I said, about 80% would be fear. 20% of it is the logistics of it, right? Which money is the biggest part, being able to afford it. But I have to say, for so many of us that are fortunate to have, jobs that pay well, jobs that have benefits, we can actually afford more than we think. And even if we can't afford it
Mhm.
today, we could afford it with some planning in the future. And it's the fear of not having that constant stream of income, or having to go without, or, worse, like, how long will it take me to find a job once it's over? And then my worst
Right.
case scenario is I've blown through all of my savings, right? So the fear of the spending of the money and the belief that
Yeah.
we don't have enough, even though with a plan, we could realize that we actually do have enough.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay. I absolutely feel like you hit the nail on the head there, because even as you were talking, I'm like, yes, that would be my fear. Yes, absolutely. That I would have that same fear as well. But the other underlying thing that I'm hearing through all of this, and my husband and I have done a lot of work in, almost like countercultural work and counter societal work. And so what is society saying we should do? What does the culture say that we should do? And then we're not doing that, and we're doing something else. And then we have to work through what that means for us. And we have to stand firm in that.
Yeah.
A little bit of what I'm hearing here is you're basically saying you are going to go against what society expects of you in the world, what your family expects of you, what all these other people's opinions that you have decided matter think of you. And you have to really push against that and not only convince yourself, but you also feel like you have to convince everybody else. Do you feel like that is like a fair assessment?
1000%. It is so countercultural. And I have to say, the one thing that really gives me a lot of hope is I see this tide coming where it is actually maybe on the horizon acceptable, right? Air quotes, acceptable. LinkedIn has a career break feature now where you can explain your career break. It's like we
Yes.
don't have to necessarily hide it. We can highlight it and talk about it, right? There was a study done that the resume gap through the pandemic has become way less of a thing. People
Yes.
see the gap and they're not having the same type of stigma or questions in their mind. And, we were talking earlier, right? I'm authoring Taking a Career Break for Dummies. Like the Dummies team has reached out to me to ask me to write this book, which I just think speaks volumes to what is becoming relevant and acceptable, right? And it's a slow process. I mean, so different than when I started this coaching back in 2017, but I see it growing as a movement. I'm totally here for it, but still, to this day, yeah, it's absolutely countercultural. And you have to frame the narrative, because if you let
Mhm.
other people frame it for you, it will always feel impossible.
Right, right. Okay. And I love some of the things that you mentioned, and I want to reiterate them because I think that so much has changed since the pandemic. There used to be this huge stigma with career gaps, and it's really just not a thing anymore. And are there people who are going to hold it against you? I'm sure there are. But like, is that the person you're going to want to work for? Probably not. So like, I wouldn't worry about that. If they're going to weed you out because of that, you don't want to be in that environment anyway. But oh my gosh, that I think is one of the fears that I hear, especially when people like lose their job. It's like, oh, there's going to be a gap. There's going to be a gap. It's like, it doesn't really matter anymore. And honestly, as somebody who has been on the inside of like burnout and transitioned jobs and not taken a break in between jobs, I can't even tell you, like, I would say probably 90% of people, if you are going to make some type of job transition, you should be taking a break in between the two jobs, because
Hallelujah.
you have to let the old job go. And a week is not going to do it. Like, if you could even take, I feel like this maybe is like the most practical thing you could do. If you have a job that you're going for and like, they want you and everything, man, take 2 months. If you can get 2 months of a break between the old job and the new job, and it's not going to tank you, like, take that time and do something like this. Do like almost plan your transition with a career break in mind, because I think it'll help you just reset yourself. And then you can go into the new job just so much more fresh and letting go of whatever the old job did to you that you need to fix. I don't know. I'm just like literally thinking about this as a career coach. Is that something that you would advise people to do as well?
Julia, you are like speaking my language, lady. You are speaking my
Yeah.
language. Like I am 100,000% on board with this. You create a gap and then you just lean all the way into it. Don't second guess it. Don't hold yourself back. Don't try to stay connected. To just restore. Find your curiosity, spark your interest, like
Mhm.
refill your cup, refuel your tank so that you come back inspired, recharged, motivated. And like you said, sort of detoxing whatever you need to let go of from that last
Yes.
experience. And I have a client who was a VP at a Fortune 100 company, and he had this, great role, was very invested, but he was exhausted and he was planning a break, got this opportunity before he had started the break to be the CEO of a digital company. And when he accepted that, he worked in exactly what you said. I could not have said it better, a 2-month break, right? So he planned for the break. And when this new opportunity came, he purposely created the space with the start date to go ahead and take the break anyway. And oh my gosh, he talks about how transformative it was because he needed that recharge to come in this new role as a CEO and really, step into the leadership, step into the energy and the
Mhm.
vision that he needed to have. And he said he learned so much about the importance of time. And so not only is he reclaiming his time for himself to be useful and to come in like full steam, excited and motivated and have reset, but he's now setting a better example for the people that he leads because he understands the power of a break and he would like ultimately for other people to experience that too, right? So he becomes a better leader that can encourage people to have more balance or a better blend of time on, time off, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love this. I think this is such a great conversation. Okay. I feel like we could go on, but I want to make sure that our audience has really tangible actions around this because actually, you know what? No, I don't want to talk about that yet. There is another there's another piece to this conversation that I wanted to make sure that we talked about, and you and I talked about it before we got onto the interview. I want to talk about privilege because I think that there is going to be a subset of people who are going to hear this episode and go, that could never be me. That is something for people who only make X amount of money, who are only in this type of work, who only look like this, who only whatever. And I want to have a conversation about that. Do you think that taking a career break would be considered a privilege? And if it is, like, what does that look like? If you don't think it is, like, what are some of the mindset things that we can work through for that?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question so much because I think, like you said, so many people can relate to this, but not me, right? There's so many reasons, but not me. So
Mhm.
yes, fundamentally, I think it should not be a privilege. It should be a right to take time off. We're humans, not machines. I think this should just be part of how our lives go. But understanding how finances work, understanding how money works, right? We need an income or a way or a means to save the money that we need to take time off. So it's a privilege in regards to some of us work very hard and make, minimum wage or just better. And it's like we're living at our means or, like above our means. And it's really hard just to live. But
Mhm.
assuming that you have, let's say, a corporate job and you make a good salary and you think like, oh, all my discretionary income is earmarked for other things. And of course, like I've got to save for this. And, you know, the discretionary stuff is a choice. So, what I will say is this: it is a privilege on a basic level. However, it is not a privilege that most of us cannot access. Most of us can access this. I
Mhm.
am, a woman of color. I am biracial. A lot of my clients are of varying ethnicities. I find that the socioeconomic space, I have people that are VPs. I have people that are just, associates that just have this dream of taking a break. Um, and in regards to this idea of why it can't be me, financially, I had $1,500 in my bank account when I sat on my life coach's couch and had this
Mhm.
epiphany. I need to take this break. I need to find a way to make this happen. I will find a way to make this happen. And I went on to save $40,000 in 18 months. At the time, I was making about 95K a year, but I had a crap load of student loan debt because of my MBA, right? So I'm
Right.
still also juggling the payments on that, which were something like $700 a month. And I actually paused and deferred and went into forbearance on some of my loans while I took my break because I still had another 45K to pay off once my break
Mhm.
started. And side note, I came back from my break and paid off all of my debt remaining within 21 months. So it can totally be done. In fact, my break inspired me to keep going and to crush more of my financial goals once it was over,
Right.
right? I also had a townhouse with a tenant and I had to be ready if the HVAC broke, if the refrigerator died, right? So
Mhm.
there were expenses within that. I have clients that are closer to retirement than they are, mid-career, and they have reasons why they think they couldn't take a break, but they do it, right? I have
Mhm.
people that have health issues. I have people that, have had to stay on because they needed the health insurance and then they're taking a risk to take a break, but they are managing, the risk they're willing to take. I have people with kids. I have people with partners. It's just, whatever you think your excuse is, where there's a will, there's a way. And even if it's not financially feasible to take a break like my break, where you're traveling around the world, if you need a break, you can absolutely find a way to
Mhm.
downscale that version of a break and take a break that is going to serve your most pressing needs and serve those
Right.
highest priorities.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this because I for anyone that's been listening to me for a while, I'm very much about what is your realistic reality? Who are you as a person? And what plan do we need to put in place that's going to help you get to where you want to go based on your defined level of success, your level of success, not society's, not your family's, not all these other arbitrary things. And I love that you're saying it doesn't have to be traveling the world, like, honestly, I think in theory that sounds great. In practice, I'm like, absolutely not. I really don't want to travel the world. I maybe want to go to 3 places and like, that's it. Right. But for me, when I was coming out of that burnout stage, just having like 3 weeks of vacation and having like, it doesn't have to be a year. It doesn't have to be this long thing. It can be what you need it to be to help you reset and get to the next thing. And it can be within your means, whatever that looks like for you. And it sounds like planning, understanding your finances, all of that is so key to what this looks like. So I appreciate you covering the different spans and different types of people that you've worked with, because it shows me that it is possible. And we do just have to think about, okay, I'm here now, and maybe I need to be at the, well, okay, if you're listening, I'm using my hands to give different levels, but if you're at a certain point, you maybe need to set some goals to get you to the next phase, right, of your career, of your life, to be able to be comfortable to say, yes, this is possible. And yes, I can do it. So, I love this. This is
Well
so
said,
great.
Julia.
Yes. Okay. Let's go into actions, because I think after hearing all of that, some people are still going to be like, nope, not me. Can't do it. I've got the kids. I've got this. I've got that. There's absolutely no way. So let's jump into the actions that you have for my audience. Kick it off for me.
Yeah. Okay. First, figure out if you need a break, right? Really spend time thinking about and asking yourself this question: what would a break do for me? Understand the potential and the possibility that you're saying no to every day that you're feeling this desire for a change, right? To take a little time off to reassess, but you're not honoring it. It's really important to consider the 360 degrees, not just the 180 that you see in front of you. I can't give this up. It's thinking about the other things that you are giving up by saying no, and just really being cognizant of that, right? The 3 most common reasons I see people taking a break is being burned out, or just, at some point of exhaustion, needing to heal something emotional or physical. Second one being uninspired, feeling maybe misaligned or disengaged, and just really wanting to hit that reset button and kind of fill your inspiration cup before you launch back into, your career path. And the last one was like myself, having a really big dream, having some dream that requires time away more than, your 15 PTO days would allow, and just making space to live your best life. Whatever your reason is, think about what you're risking and what you're saying no to if you don't take a break.
Yes.
Yeah. Go
Yes.
ahead, Julia. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. We're both so excited about this.
I know. It's true.
Okay. So one of the things that I loved that you were talking about is, well, I don't love it because it stinks for people going through it, but this need to find yourself again. And I feel like, the pandemic was such a shift for us in society. And again, if you've been listening to me, this is something I talk about all the time. Like, we've really shifted how we work, how we think, what's important to us. And I would say most of my clients, most of the people that are coming to me, it's really this: I realized that I wasn't doing what I wanted to do, or I realized that everything was misaligned, like you were talking about. And I feel like that is such a prominent narrative out there right now that some people are being really open about, but I would say most people are harboring inside of them.
Yeah.
And they just need like that coaching, somebody like us to really help them figure out, like, who am I? What am I doing in this world? What does it look like? So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I think there are more people going through that than we actually realize. It's the people that decide to take action in some way to do something about it that are really going to end up going, much farther in their life because they're kind of digging in and figuring out all of those things now.
Yeah, absolutely, Julia. And, I'm sure you see this with your clients. What I've noticed is, sometimes people are just doubling down on old dreams. So it's an old path that fit you. It was the thing that you really did want at 25. But in the absence of reconnecting with yourself to figure out who am I now at 30? What do I want at 35? What is true for me now? We're like, well, I guess I'll just keep doubling down on the old go. So now I need to be a manager. And then of course I need to go gun for that VP thing because that's just like the next natural step.
Mhm.
Whereas our actual desired path has changed at some point, right?
Yes, yes. Okay, and I'm going to make that really practical for people. If you're new here, when I went to college, I was an art major in college. I wanted to be an art director. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a lawyer. My career path has been all over the place, and I ended up going back to grad school, working in higher education. Loved that. If you had told me 6 or 7 years ago that I was going to own my own business, I would have laughed at you. Never thought that I would be here, but life happened and it completely changed everything that I thought I wanted. And that's why I talk about this so much. It's like life is going to come at you when you least expect it. And for me, it was in the form of my parents passing, but it could be you lose your job. It could be you get married, you have a kid. There are so many different things that can happen. The pandemic could have done it for you. But now you're sitting there like, oh, I am a different person. I think differently now. I have different priorities. What does that look like? So yes, this is just yes. Yes to all of this. Okay, what is the second action that our audience can take if they want to figure out this career break thing for themselves?
Yeah. So when you start to think about a break, one of the scary points can be what would I even do? How do I go about designing it? So I just want to give the audience 3 key steps when you think about designing it. And if you want to design it to boost success once the break is over, these are the 3 steps you need. So this will help you start to figure out and start to visualize what this break could look like. Number 1, get clear on your purpose. Know why you would take this break. What is the sort of deepest, most honest reason why you want this time? What are you trying to either reclaim or invest in or create for yourself? Number 2, understand what success means to you. So, Julia, this 100% aligns with what you were saying about define your success, right? So, I like to think of it as the 4 themes of your break. So, having 4 sort of pillars of what you want to get out of it. For some people, it's learning, it could be rest, it could be joy, it could be inspiration, it could be connection, right? Whatever is true for you, understand what your 4 pillars are so that you're able to have this sort of North Star guiding you towards your version of success so that whatever you need, this break fully gives you all of that and more and meets your expectations and even, I dare say, exceed them. And the last step is critical for this, sort of boosting your success, advancing your career once you come out of it, having a re-entry period. So consciously setting aside a period of time, I would recommend one for every 6. So when you think about the time you're going to take off for every 6 weeks, dedicating one of those to re-entry so that you have
Mm.
time to ask yourself hard questions. You have time to have all the feelings. When I went back
Mhm.
after my career, I was sad to not be traveling. I was cranky about not traveling anymore. I had reverse culture shock, right? Like I had like a stinky attitude and I needed some time to just process
Right.
the thought that like, okay, I'm going back to work and what is true for me now and that reassessment. And then also to network and update your resume. So just setting aside this time very thoughtfully means you're not
Mhm.
in a desperate space trying to like just find the next thing. And those 3 steps are basically what you need at the most essential level to design a break that will be successful for you.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I feel like, so for somebody like me who's like high achiever, but also really anxious and wants to make sure that, my time is filled exactly what you're saying. Like I must be productive, God forbid I rest for like 3 days or something. But I love this identifying those pillars because even if we think about rest, as soon as you said it, I was like, oh, there's no way. Like, there's no way I would actually rest if I gave myself multiple months to, not be focused on work
Yeah.
or a job or something like that. But the reality is, if you make it that pillar, I love that idea because then you get to decide what rest looks like for you.
Oh, Julia, you get this. I am having
I
the best conversation with you. It's like we're on the same wavelength, 100%. Yes.
No, I loved, I mean, even as you were talking, I had so many ideas like for if I had a client doing this, it's like you could even stay connected via LinkedIn by posting, the things that you're learning or the experiences that you're having. Because I feel like if we're talking about, I don't know, I feel like for me, I'd be afraid of, are people going to forget about me? Am I not going to be ready, to go back to the workforce? And you might not, you might make some other decisions after you do something like this. But I think keeping that connection alive with your network is also really helpful. And they get to see the cool things that you're doing and they get to ask those questions and they get to share that with people. Like I can see that being such a really good connection point to keep you on top of people's minds, basically in the career, quote unquote, career world. So I think that's so great. Okay.
Mm.
Our last action, I feel like this is the key to everything if you are going to do something like this. And you're going to talk about the timeline. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So, question, right? When do I start planning? How do I figure out when I could take a break? So, number one, I want to say it's never too soon to start planning because there are several things that are going to happen once you start thinking about this. One, you're going to start saving money. You're going to start evaluating how you spend money and you're going to be super intentional with where those pennies go and they're going to start adding up. Number two, you're going to get clear on what's missing or what you're craving that you don't have right now, which is always helpful because you don't need a break to start taking action. A break just creates a crap ton of space for you to like make it happen without competing interests, right? But knowing these things is super powerful and it's going to give you a plan to create space in your life. So never too soon. Good things happen. The worst thing that happens is you decide to keep working and then you've saved more money. You feel clear on what you need. You're giving it to yourself and you like know that when you need space, you can create that space. The average time that my clients start preparing is between 6 months to 2 years. A huge piece of that depends on their financial situation. So you could plan, as in design a break and get your mindset ready for a break in 2 to 3 months if you were really dedicated and working on it with sort of like a structure. But if you need to save money, obviously that timeline can extend. So I recommend doing the math for your ASAP date, right? So what is my as soon as possible date? If I needed a break, if I wanted to take a break, when could that happen? So you want to think about, roughly how long might you want to be on this break? If you've thought about your pillars and you know your purpose, it might be easier to guesstimate what that number would be. And then just guess the cost associated with that. You could do some quick math if you wanted to. I would say if you were going to take 6 months off, think about 15 to 20 grand. If you were going to take 12 months off, think 25 to 35. Those are averages I see, my clients working within. You could make it less, you could make it more, but get your cost number, subtract the current savings that you have access to, not your emergency fund, but like the savings that you have, and then divide by how much money you can save every month from here on out, right? For that missing piece of money, like whatever I need beyond my savings, how many months is it going to take me to save that amount? And that is your ASAP date, right? Doesn't mean you have to go then, but it gives you an idea. Wow, at the rate I'm going, the way I'm spending money, the way I think I want to have my break, it would take me, 18 months to save and get cracking on that.
Yes, yes. Okay. The other thing I want to share too, because I think this is so important, people don't realize it until they make the choice. When you make the choice to do something, your motivation to do that thing completely shifts. And I see this all the time in career coaching where somebody will do like a 30-minute clarity call with me. And they're like, I think I want to do this. I think this is where I'm headed. Like they're very clear for the most part about why they're reaching out to me and what they want. And then we get to the first session and everything has changed. And they're like, well, but now I want to quit my job. And now I want to do this. And now I want to go here. And I'm like, whoa, we just made a big leap from I'm exploring to I'm over it. And the reason is because they took the step. They took the first step to contact someone like me to say, I'm not happy and I need to change. I know something needs to change. And just the act of doing that allowed them to like open their mind up to possibilities and then the reality of what was going on and all of that. And I can see the same thing happening here. As soon as you give yourself permission, you said this earlier, as soon as you give yourself permission to want to do something like this, then all your decisions change and your motivations change. And all of the sudden you can save the money and you make different choices about where that money is going. And oh my gosh, I love
Yeah.
this.
Power and ownership, right? When you start to own what you want, you start to hold yourself accountable to that, and it starts to become something potentially real in your mind, and your actions follow.
Yes. Okay. Katrina, this has been such a good conversation. I'm so excited to hear about people who are going to at least think about this. I think it's something to definitely consider whether you do something long term or you just plan for a break in between jobs. I feel like that's like the most basic version of this that you can do that I would recommend as a career coach everybody do. So definitely look into that. But I know that you have a couple of freebies or you have a freebie for the audience. So I want you to talk about that and then also tell us where we can find you.
Yeah. So the freebie is Best Break Ever. It's a mini training. It's 3 short videos, about 10 to 15 minutes, and it really breaks down. It's kind of like a career break 101. It breaks down the tools that you need to think about taking a break, to plan for a break. I give some really high level tips on managing fear, right? And thinking about questions you can answer to get clear on your purpose and the questions you need to answer to get clear on your themes. So it really helps you take sort of that next step towards what would this look like and creating that vision of how you make it possible. And it's just a really great overview of what a break could be for you and how it could change your life.
Awesome. Awesome. And I will leave a link to that in the blog post for this episode. And then I'm assuming that you're on social media in some
I am.
capacity. What's kind of
Yes.
your main platform that people can find you on?
Yeah, people can find me on LinkedIn. I love to show up there. So it's just Katrina McGhee on LinkedIn. And I share some great content there, some ideas, some tips, and also amazing episodes like this where I feel like we have a great conversation and I want people to know about it.
Awesome. Well, y'all know I'm on LinkedIn all the time, so we will definitely be connected and sharing each other's content. And I will put all of those links into the blog post for this episode. But Katrina, thank you so much for being here and being a guest. This was such a great conversation, and I'm excited for people to start thinking about a career break.
Thank you so much, Julia.